Good afternoon. My name is David Davis Cooper, and today I'm going to be talking about the power and neurobiology of addiction. This right here is a lot of time. Can anybody tell me what this time may represent? Isaiah. Good guess. Anybody else? Mason. Correct. 2 hours and 24 minutes is the average time somebody in the United States spends on social media. In the dark blue, we can see that Facebook is one of the most used apps amongst adults in the United States. We can see that approximately 61% of adults use Facebook, and approximately it's used for at least 43 minutes per day. Every day, someone grabs their phone as soon as they step foot out of bed. They scroll for endless hours. It is as if like they're addicted to being on their phone. Addiction is a behavior that serves both to generate pleasure and an escape from internal discomfort. Addiction is an actual disorder. An disorder is an abnormal physical or mental condition. There are many types of addictions. There is an eating disorder, alcoholism, nicotine dependence, internet dependence, substance use disorder, and there are many more. Addiction impacts the body, brain, and social life. It can make a person more violent or isolated and depressed. It can also affect the brain, making a person think they need whatever they're addicted to. To begin, nicotine dependence. This is something we probably see almost every single day. 11.5% of Americans suffer from a nicotine dependence disorder. A nicotine addiction is obtained by smoking tobacco. Nicotine is a naturally found drug and chemical found in tobacco plants. This addiction can affect someone's blood pressure, heart rate, and arteries, which can lead to a blood clot, heart attack, or even a stroke. Alcohol use disorder. Alcoholism is characterized by an inability to control alcohol consumption. This can lead to mental problems and issues with the liver and kidney. Gambling disorder. According to the Mayo Clinic, gambling is an uncontrollable urge to gamble despite the negative consequences on one's life. Here are forms of gambling: online gambling, slots, lottery, and many more. Casinos aren't created for profitable gain. The way casinos attempt to limit you from making profitable gain is by you not having any windows, clocks, or be able to use your phone. This is purposely done for you to lose track of time without realizing how much time and money you spent. Casinos have a built-in advantage for every single game they offer, ensuring the probability of over time. Have you ever seen this? This is actually false. Truth is that each game you play at the casino, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, it has a statistical probability that you will lose. When you gamble, the odds are against you, not with you. Internet addiction disorder. This is relatively a new dependency that we see. Easy to say, an internet addiction is when somebody is addicted to their phone or the internet. By a show of hands, who believes they use social media for at least 30 to 45 minutes a day? Next, who believes they use their phone to at least 1 to 3 hours a day? Finally, who believes they use their phone for even more time? I asked 3 students from my class to show me their screen times and how much time they spent on their phones last week. We can see on average that these gentlemen spent 20 hours and 1 minute on social media apps. We can see that there was an increase of usage of the device and some a decline. As of 2024, there are 6.8 billion smartphone users in the world. With the net population, 6.3% have a phone addiction. TikTok being one of the most used social media apps currently, we can see how much of an impact it has on a society and how its effects can be tracked in the classroom. Research published by Virgin Mobile discovered that those billions of smartphone users receive 427% more messages and notifications than they did a decade ago. They also send 278% more texts. Constant communication like this may cause someone to have social problems and not know how to interact with others. This disorder occurs in our society more than any other simply because it is accessible to anyone. Eating disorder. This behavior resembles substance use disorders involving cravings, loss of control, and continued overeating despite adverse effects. Eating disorders may also make people more at risk of developing depression, particularly if they experience rapid weight loss or starvation. An eating disorder can cause someone to have body dysmorphic disorder, creating them to become less confident within themselves. An eating disorder can cause diabetes, high blood pressure, or obesity. When we do things that are supposed to make us feel good, our brain rewards us for that. Things like exercising, eating, and bonding with loved ones makes us feel good. If we don't exercise, eat, or bond with loved ones, we may rely on something else that provides us happiness, which can lead to somebody developing an addiction. Addiction affects various parts of the brain. Addiction affects the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, brainstem, parietal lobe, and cerebellum. Each is responsible for daily communication and encounters with peers. The issue with this is that addictive substances or behaviors hijack our reward system pathways. Addiction occurs in the ventral tegmental area of the brain, which is responsible for being happy, pleasurable, and motivated. The prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of decision making and impulse control, also gets affected when a person is addicted to a substance or behavior. This can cause a person to react irrationally or erratically in everyday life. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter or a chemical that sends signals to other parts of the brain that lead us to be happy. When somebody is addicted to a substance or behavior, the dopamine in the brain responds 10 times stronger, causing the person to do it again. According to the American Addiction Center, 7.9% of adults suffer from an addiction disorder and a mental health issue. An addiction disorder also may affect someone emotionally. An addiction can trigger someone to show more aggressive behavior, paranoia, or overwhelmness. Gambling addictions, for example, can ruin families. A study conducted in 2024 by Cincinnati WKRC, analyzing data from 38 states that legalized sports gambling, found that bankruptcy filings increased by 28% since 2018. This uptick translates to approximately 100,000 additional bankruptcies annually in these states just off gambling alone. During the coronavirus in 2020, it was a big time for isolation. An article from Senate RPC states that there was a significant increase in overdose usage by 29%. We can see that the cause of isolation and having nobody to be around causes people to use drugs. And we can see that they use something else to be happy. This article explains how in 2020 people use more drugs or less drugs because of isolation. A rehab center is a place where they provide therapy to someone battling substance abuse, mental health issues, or physical injuries. On this graph, you can see how an outpatient, someone who enters a hospital without being admitted, has to pay nearly $5,000 just to receive medical treatment. An inpatient, someone who stays overnight, has to pay even more. Just on top of that, depending on your addiction, if you need medication or not, we still see that the outcome comes with a cost. The point of a rehab center is to help the patient overcome what the person needs help with. But something that isn't mentioned enough is that it's very expensive. Reasoning for someone to not go to a rehab center is because of its cost. But the quality of service is nowhere near what a residential patient experiences. These laws help financial addicts to help the addicts financially to be able to seek help. The Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act created more laws that help those is even better to help those who are suffering, aimed at addressing the nation's opioid crisis through a comprehensive evidence-based response. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, it was the first major federal addiction legislation in over 40 years, and is notable for authorizing a wide range of programs to prevent and treat addiction. Substance abuse prevention and treatment, a major source of federal funding in the United States that supports state and community level substance use prevention, treatment, and recovery services. In Catholic social teachings, it is very important to have options for the poor and vulnerable. And the Catholic Charities of Baltimore help those who are battling addiction overcome what they're overcome. They offer mental health screening, counseling, therapy, psychiatric rehabilitation, substance use disorder treatment, medical treatment, and telehealth. It is important to prioritize those who don't have much and who need help the most. The Catholic Charities of Baltimore provide this by having a nonprofit organization helping those in need. Addiction is expensive, powerful sickness that can impact people in a variety of ways, from drug use to gambling, and requires intensive therapy and programming to get better. I chose this topic because the imagery you create of someone when they battle in addiction, you think of them as a monster. You may see people on the streets and be like, "Hey, what's wrong with that person?" But and truly, you don't know what's happening inside of them. Even now, the government laws create taking out accessibility for people who are addicts is making it even harder for people to get sober. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Madisyn Hall, and today I'll be talking about horror movies and how they impact our lives. Have you ever watched these movies before? If not, you really should because they're really good. But I mainly recommend these movies because they reveal crucial truths about racism, societal issues, and encourages us to change. They do this through metaphors and messaging. You, You might be wondering, what is social commentary? Social commentary is a way to use artistic or rhetorical methods to critique or highlight societal issues, norms, and injustices, aiming to inform the public and encourages change. One example of a horror movie that has social commentary is Get Out. Get Out is a psychological horror film co-produced and directed by Jordan Peele. It portrays a black photographer who reluctantly goes with his white girlfriend for a family get-together. However, her family, who appears to be friendly and welcoming, harbor dark secrets that put Chris in immediate danger. Get Out has a lot of social commentary because it depicts how Chris, the main character, faces racism from his girlfriend's family. It also depicts privilege, and the appropriation of black culture. The Shining is a 1980 psychological horror film directed by and produced by Stanley Kubrick and co-written with Diane Johnson. The Shining portrays the descent into insanity of a recovering alcoholic and aspiring novelist who takes a job as a winter caretaker with his wife and his son, and how he slowly falls back into his old ways. This explores the dangers of alcoholics, American colonialism, genocide, and the corruption of the American dream, and the dark side of human nature and the destructive potential of isolation. Next, I'll be talking about Jordan Peele's Us film. He uses the horror genre to explore themes of social inequality, class divisions, and the fear of the other within society. The movie uses the allegory of the tethered, a parallel group of people living underground, to comment on the plight of the oppressed and marginalized, mirroring the historical and contemporary struggles of marginalized groups in America. You might be wondering, why are people so drawn to the horror genre? Well, horror is one of the most popular genres in storytelling. From books to films, we can't seem to get enough of what scares us the most. We will look at a brief definition of horror and why we enjoy it so much. We will also look at the history of horror and how it has evolved over the years. The genre of horror is open to interpretation since horror has had many definitions. You might be wondering, what is horror's history? But first, let me tell you what the definition of horror is. Horror is an intense fear of shock or fear or disgust. Horror has had many phases and peaks throughout history, starting with the golden age of horror. This phase was widely considered the finest era of the genre. The 2 decades between the 1920s and 30s saw many classics being produced and could be neatly divided down the middle to create a separation between the silent classics and the talkies. On the silent side of the line, you've got monumental titles such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligula and Nosferatu, the first movies to really make an attempt to unsettle their audience. These titles are one of Rotten Tomatoes' best horror movies of all time and establish just about every surviving vampire cliche in the book. The atomic years. Because of the real terror the world was facing in the 40s, namely world wars, nuclear bombs, genocide, and the political discord, people were afraid of things like nuclear fallout. Horror started to show us things Americans were really afraid of. Horror began to feature antagonists that were less supernatural in nature. Radioactive mutations became a common theme, as did the fear of invasion with the War of the Worlds and When Worlds Collide, both big hits in 1953. The latter marked the earliest rumblings of the disaster movie genre, but it would be a couple of more decades before that would get into full swing. The last era I'll be talking about is one of my favorite eras, and that is slasher films. If there's one trope that typifies the 80s, that is the slasher format. A relentless antagonist hunting down and killing a bunch of kids in ever increasing inventive ways, one by one. Arguably kicked off by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1974. The output became prolific over the next decade. For every two, for every 10 generic slashers, however, there was one flick that would end up becoming a cult classic, even if critical success was mixed at the time. Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street are the most prominent examples which became so successful that they spawned their own long running franchises. As I talked about in the other slides, horror has had many eras with many characters, some including Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, can often be used as metaphors. These characters can be used to represent toxic masculinity. Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street tapped into fears of societal breakdown, the loss of innocence, and the dangers lurking within the suburban ideal. Social commentary is also seen in solidarity in Catholic social teaching. But you might be asking, what is solidarity? Solidarity is a virtue recognize, that recognizes our interconnectedness as a human family, urging us to actively work for the well being of a human family of all, especially the most vulnerable, and to treat everyone as another self. These two topics connect because they both talk about the political, economic, and cultural structures of society within their topic. This genre of horror isn't going to slow down, and its relevance to society will only get stronger. Here's a small assignment for you. Watch the following clip from Jordan Peele's Get Out and do the following. Listen for how the music changes your feelings. Look at the colors. What are people wearing, and how does it show the different groups? Think about Peele's commentary in race. What is he trying to show us?
Hey, hang on. Chris, I want to introduce you to some friends. This is David and Marcia Wincott, Ronald and Celia Jeffries, Hiroki Tanaka, and Jessica and Friedrich Wall. Too many names to remember, but hi.
Do you find the being African American has more advantage or disadvantage in the modern world?
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Hey, yo, man. They were asking me about the African American experience. Maybe you could take this one. Oh, well, I find that the African American experience for me has been, for the most part, very good. Although I find it difficult to go into detail as I haven't had much desire to leave the house in a while.
We've become such homebodies.
Yes, but even when you go into the city, I've just had no interest. The chores have become my sanctuary. Joe, sorry, man. Okay. Get out! Yo! Yeah! Yo! Get out! Yo!
In conclusion, we just witnessed how a 1 minute clip of a horror movie can make you feel unsettled. Peele is a very talented movie producer, and he easily does this in many of his movies. So next time you choose to sit down and watch TV, put on a horror movie and see what you can learn. Thank you.
When you see this painting, what do you see? A bunch of scary make-believe creatures in a small room? Yes and no. This painting represents a powerful anti-war statement created in response to the bombing in the Basque town of Guernica during the Spanish Civil War. It shows the horrors of what happened inside the war. Hello everyone, my name is Edgar, and today I will be talking about how conflict throughout our history inspires certain pieces of art. The picture I have up here is one example of the many art pieces that fit into the category conflict that inspires art. This piece of art was created by the artist Banksy. He created it because he wanted to raise the awareness about the ongoing conflict in Syria. It means the loss of innocence or the arrival of a new hope and love. Today, I will be talking about the Boston Tea Party, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the hashtag MeToo movement, immigration, and the Russia versus Ukraine war. These show signs of how conflict inspires art. But before I talk about all of this, I will first talk about art. Art is the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. It is typically in a visual form, such as a painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty. In this picture, what do you see? Kyra. What do you think this picture means? This picture was an engraving in a book written by William Cooper. The Boston Tea Party was a 1773 protest against British policies, specifically the Tea Act, which granted a monopoly to the British East India Company and levied a tax on tea without colonial representation in Parliament. As an act of rebellion, this artwork uses dark and stormy colors and clenched fists to represent the anger the colonists felt during this conflict. The Civil Rights Movement was a period in the mid 20th century where African Americans, along with allies, fought for equal rights and an end to racial segregation in the United States. Many artists created art to raise awareness, advocate for social change, and foster a sense of community and identity. Paintings, sculptures, photographs, murals, drawings, poetry, and music were all inspired by conflict. Often, the art of this time period reflects back to African American experience and the struggles that African Americans face when fighting for freedom. Another protest regarding race is called the Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter movement, or BLM, was a movement started by an incident that happened back in 2014 with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. George Zimmerman killed and shot Trayvon due to Trayvon looking suspicious and allegedly having a gun. George Zimmerman pleaded self-defense. Similar cases were happening where some white police officers were killing black males. For a time, people gave little attention for Trayvon's case until 2020. Another man was shot and killed, and his name was George Floyd. George Floyd was an African American man who was killed by police officer Derek Chauvin. After word spread, people were frustrated, furious, and the BLM movement gained national attention. People started protesting about police brutality and racial bias against black people. These images show murals about the George Floyd incident, and on the bottom picture, it shows other victims who were also killed by police. The phrase said by George Floyd over and over was, "I can't breathe." Artists use this phrase in their artwork to represent the struggle black Americans faced. And during the protest, multiple artists utilized the fist. According to Google, the fist was a symbol created representing black pride, solidarity, and resistance against racial injustice and oppression. It was common to see civil rights marchers or black Panther individuals use the raised fist to show resistance and solidarity. It also represents the unity of the Black community in their fight for equality and liberation, building upon a long history of the fist as a symbol of unity and resistance. And the picture on top shows names of other victims who were killed in police brutality. Another protest that started because of sexual violence towards women is the hashtag MeToo movement. The hashtag MeToo movement is a social movement and awareness campaign against sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and rape culture. It started when women started speaking out about sexual intimidation in Hollywood. As one woman had the courage to speak out, more and more women spoke out about their experiences. Art coming out of the hashtag MeToo movement often depicts women with something covering their mouth. This is to symbolize the force silencing women on matters like sexual assault and violence. The hashtag MeToo movement is an artistic component. It represents a social media hashtag that was used to bring awareness to the issue of sexual assault and harassment and to empower survivors to share their stories. The hashtag was popularized by the actress Alyssa Milano, who encouraged people to share their experiences using the phrase "Me Too," sharing their similar experiences and to help assure others that they are not alone in having experienced abuse too. And 30,000 people responded, "Me Too," within 12 hours. Another major conflict that is still going on in the US is the issue about immigrants. These issues started because of proposed or enacted immigration laws that restrict or punish immigrants and the need to advocate for broader immigration reform and human rights. And many spoke out using art. The pictures I have up here are protests that aim the demand to pass citizenship and address discrimination and abusive treatment of immigrants. Pro-immigration art is an art that depicts liberty and rights. Sometimes they use common Latino stylings like the skeletons on top of this photo. And sometimes images depict traditionally Latino looking people. And lastly, the Russia versus Ukraine war. This war started because Russia wanted to regain control over Ukraine and accused the Ukrainian government of neo Nazis committing genocide against the Russian minority in the Donbass and said that Russia's goal was to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. However, the Russian government has specific financial interests in Ukraine, and the propaganda put forth by Russia was unfounded. These pictures show these pictures show art pieces that were inspired by conflict. These images are a strong call for peace. The blue and yellow colors of the Ukrainian flag became symbolic of global support and Ukraine's cause and freedom. The Catholic social teaching, promotion of peace, fits with my topic, conflict that inspires art, because it shows a way of recognizing what happened within the conflict, but without using the need of violence and chaos like how regular protests perform. In conclusion, when you see an art piece, don't just admire it for its beauty. Well, you can, but think about why it was created and the meaning behind it.
You ever felt so tired that you couldn't get your basic tasks, homework, or housework done? Okay, raise your hand if you know anyone who may be considered an A+ student. Lastly, raise your hand if you've ever heard of burnout. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Webster, and I'll be talking about high achiever burnout in middle school through high school students. The school day is a challenging time for high achievement students and causes pressure to be the best at what they do to maintain their status. What is burnout? Burnout is a form of overexhaustion from feeling too much pressure. Burnout is different from being tired or lazy. Laziness happens for a short period of time and is just a general lack of motivation. But burnout can happen for longer periods of time and is a mental, physical, and emotional state of exhaustion. There are different types of burnout. First, there's overload burnout. This happens when you have so much to do that you eventually crash. You can think of this as a student overloading on AP classes, extracurriculars, and working outside of school. Next is under challenge burnout. Under challenge burnout impacts students who are intellectually gifted but are under challenged. Next is neglect burnout. Neglect burnout happens when you are feeling neglected and left out. All of these lead to habitual burnout, which is the most serious stage of burnout.
This means that all the bad elements of your mental and physical state are chronic, leading to depression and anxiety. Any of these things can happen to any high achieving student, but why? Frequently, it is because of the demanding, chaotic, and unmanageable workloads students may face without asking for help. The mindset of perfectionism often makes up a high achiever. Students do lots of hard work, overextend themselves, do not ask for appropriate help, and eventually burn out. In the past 10 years, the number of students taking AP exams in high school has grown. Students are challenging themselves to learn more complicated subject matter and get college credit for that high school work. The rate of students that also have part-time jobs has increased steadily since its lowest dip in 2008. In the last decade, more and more students are applying to college, yet acceptance rates seem fairly stable. More kids have to work much harder to achieve college enrollment. How do these graphs correlate with my topic? All of these factors contribute to an intense culture of work with little time for breaks. Burnout has a different scale from person to person. Typically, physical burnout symptoms include headaches, stomach aches, fatigue, frequent illnesses, and changes of sleep and appetite. Burnout can lead to behavioral changes such as reduced performances in everyday tasks, frequent illnesses, and changes of sleep and appetite. Burnout can take a huge toll on someone's mental health by instigating emotions like helplessness, cynicism, sense of failure, and self-doubt, decreased satisfaction, feeling detached or alone in the world, and loss of motivation. Burnt out students may see their grades eventually drop, causing overachievers to dig themselves into a deeper hole of burning out, wanting to do better and not show that they are weak. As said before, high achievers are more prone to anxiety, which is the intense feeling of fear and is a response to a possible threat. According to Anaya Raja, a PhD physician, high-functioning anxiety is a term used to describe anyone who manages to function at a high level in their personal and professional life. On the outside, they may seem like they have everything together, but on the inside, they may be struggling with constant worry, fear, and self-doubt. People with high-functioning anxiety tend to be high achievers. You may have heard of a standard for school and jobs. You may have even heard of a societal standard. A social standard is an unwritten social rule which defines what is expected of individuals. They are measured as what is seen as normal in society. The societal standard for a high achiever is to excel in everything they do, be respectful, be nice and neat, be driven by success, and value hard work over well-being. These overachievers have meticulously built a name for themselves on their high standard of performance. This causes problems because they strive to uphold this standard, raising the bar higher and higher, causing them to do more and more work to prove that they can live up to these standards. Andrew Duckworth did a study and developed the concept of grit. Grit is having determination, perseverance, and passion, even in hard times. It has been adopted by educational institutions, psychology professionals, and people in the workforce of America. However, this mindset has some serious problems. What happens when someone experiences burnout and can no longer have the determination to keep going and following through with societal standards? What happens when a student finds out that, in fact, keeping grit causes them to burn out? As you can see, white and Asian individuals are more likely to get paid more with higher levels of education. Hispanic and Black individuals are less likely to get paid more with low levels of education. Also, men are increasingly more likely to get paid than women, even though women are more likely to graduate with higher levels of education. Stereotypes of race, ethnicity, culture, and gender all lead to unfair levels of stress on individuals. Women have to work much harder than men to achieve equitable returns. Black, brown, and non-white individuals work much harder than their white counterparts to get half as much. Working hard to achieve little leads to immense levels of burnout. A stereotype is a widely held, simplified, and essentialist belief about a specific group. Groups are often stereotyped on the basis of sex, gender identity, race and ethnicity, nationality and age, socioeconomic, language, and so forth. Taking a look at the 50 Fortune 500 company CEOs over time, notice that the overwhelming majority of people in positions of power are white men, represented by green squares. One stereotype is the older sister stereotype. The older sister stereotype is a term used to describe the firstborn. 4. Reevaluating your goals and values. 5. Explore alternative paths and opportunities. 6. Recovering from burnout can be much easier with the help of a therapist. Catholic social teaching is a part of Catholic teaching that addresses matters of social, economic, and ecological justice in the world. The CST that correlates to high achiever burnout is participation. Participation means that how we organize a society directly affects human dignity and the capacities of individuals to grow in that community. We believe people have a right and duty to participate in society, seeking together the common good and well-being of all. The CST goes with the topic of high achiever burnout because if a person cannot participate well in their environment, they cannot grow and be supported. If they burn out, they may not participate as well or at all. Many high achievers burn out and have a higher case of anxiety because of the pressure, responsibilities, and societal standards and should be talked about more. Thank you for listening because burnout is very important.
One of these individuals is a monster. A toxic person who only cares about his looks, his strength, getting the woman that he wants, and getting the best of the best. The other individual is the beast. Although this is just a Disney movie, we are taught from a young age the negatives of Gaston. In a movie titled Beauty and the Beast, we are left to wonder if the monster is really the beast. Maybe the monster is the hypermasculine Gaston. Good afternoon. I'm Jaden Montenegro, and today I will be talking about toxic masculinity. The 4 focal points for today are defining toxic masculinity, what are the causes for it, the effects, and then the solutions. Included with the solutions will be a section about the Catholic social teachings regarding how the church shows us how to apply our faith for the betterment of our society. So what is toxic masculinity? Toxic masculinity is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is an ideology about being masculine, or mainly in a way that is detrimental or harmful to all society. Toxic masculinity creates unrealistic expectations on who men should be and what they should provide. This often leads to negative changes in behavior like aggression, anger, and mental health issues. If men become overly aggressive because of their societal issues, this can then affect other marginalized groups like women and the LGBTQIA+ community too. Toxic masculinity combines a multitude of ideas. Many of them are closely related. Never being a victim. Masculinity is typically not associated with weakness, which often unfairly makes men the aggressors in arguments. Be a man. Most men feel like they need to have certain attributes, particularly physical strength and financial stability. Violence. Toxic masculinity creates violence in men because of stress and the pressure of our society. Emasculation. Through the external pressures of toxic masculinity, men start to feel incomplete or unaccomplished. When men are given high expectations, they are likely not to live up to everything. This creates a sense of failure in men, which negatively affects their mental state. Initiation. Men are expected to be the ones to set off plans and the ones to take initiative in doing things. Suppressed emotions. From an early young age, men are taught not to cry and to be tough. As they get older, those teachings correlate to unhealthy habits or not showing emotion. This also rises from a lack of emotional support between men because they share the same thinking. These ideas combined create a bad mindset in the minds of men. They carry on from person to person, generation to generation, until they are embedded in our society. As shown on the graph, men that consider themselves very masculine agree that they like extremely masculine things, such as being aggressive, loving a good fight, and taking advantage of others. Other groups of people, including self-defined masculine men, are typically well below 50% when it comes to agreeing with these toxic traits. Now we will talk about the causes of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity comes about at a young age and develops into greater and more harmful things throughout one's life. The three focal points for toxic masculinity is trauma, toxic interactions with other men, and influencers through social media. First, we'll talk about trauma, specifically familial trauma. Familial trauma can be many things, such as abusive parents, bad relations between family, and a lack of a parent, specifically a father figure. For our particular topic, I will be focusing on the lack of a father figure. Young men that grow up in households without someone to look up to, at least not a good example, is something that affects them in the long run. There can be a greater pressure to succeed or to be someone else's idea of a man because they themselves do not know what that is. This can also, on the other hand, it can also cause aggression and violence in young men because they were never shown by someone close to them how they should act. This can also be seen with someone who has abusive parents. Their everyday experience most often consists of violence at home, which could then turn into violence when they interact with others because they see it as normal. Interactions between men also contribute to toxic masculinity. It mostly depends on who you surround yourself with. As kids, you look up to the older people around you. You want to be like them because they inspire you. But sometimes you don't realize some of the things they do are wrong. Those people can become bad influences. Some examples would be sharing hypersexual ideas or showing aggressive behavior and language. Also, when you're around your friends, certain behaviors are tolerated between each other and with other people. Hitting each other and play fighting is commonly seen in friend groups. Peer pressure can also influence behavior. If you are surrounded by people that are a certain way, you are most likely to change yourself to fit in. Influencers give unrealistic expectations of what you should look like, what you should accomplish, or what you should have in your possession. I guarantee that most of the people would like to look like the man on the screen, Ashton Hall, but that might not be the case for most people. He is a fit, wealthy individual and represents a small group of people in our society. He typically wakes up between 4 and 5 in the morning to start his morning routine. He typically shows himself using expensive brands of water or other expensive equipment. He is often served by nameless, faceless women who provide for all of his wants and needs. This provides an unrealistic view of what you should be doing for self-betterment and insinuates that Hall achieves his own success when in reality he is aided by individuals around him. Do any of you know who this is? Yes. His name is Andrew Tate, and he is another social media influencer. He is known for his misogynistic ideas. He believes that in a relationship, the man has the rights to the woman's body. A woman's worth is based on how many past partners she has had, and the lower the better. On the other hand, he not only believes, but actively encourages men to be with multiple partners, and that speaks to the man's masculinity. There are other influencers like Tate and Ashton Hall with massive followings. Next, how does toxic masculinity affect people? The stress of trying to live up to the expectations set by toxic masculinity takes a toll on the mind. As a way to escape, men turn to alcohol and other drugs. This causes a lower life expectancy in men than with women in our society. According to a study done by PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, 1 out of 5 men die before the age of 50, and many of the leading causes of death in the Americas, including heart disease, interpersonal violence, and road accidents, are directly related to socially constructed macho behaviors. Men tend to suppress their emotions because of their link to femininity, which becomes an unhealthy habit. This graph shows how many people in various age groups have accepted hypermasculine stereotypes. Around 60 to 70% of 15 to 17-year-olds that were questioned admitted to some level of conformity to the masculine norms. From ages 18 to 35, on average, 50% of the people who were questioned had some level of conformity with the norms. From ages 36 to 55, on average a 31% conformity to the masculine norms. The younger generations of men are becoming more accepting to the toxic stereotypes. This could be linked to the impact that social media has on a very electronically connected society. Other groups of people are indirectly affected by the stereotypes on men. Throughout history, women have been significantly overlooked, and that still hasn't been completely changed, as shown by the previously mentioned Andrew Tate. When men focus on themselves to achieve masculine goals, they tend to become disconnected with their families, which leaves the familial duties to the woman. This then too stresses out the woman because all responsibilities are placed on them and they get no help. The LGBTQIA plus community gets discriminated against a lot by the overly masculine men in society. The community directly challenges the beliefs of hyper masculine men because they tend to stray away from masculine norms set by society. In response to this, hypermasculine men tend to be violent towards those who are part of the community. Finally, how do we prevent toxic masculinity? The most important thing is to accept all people for who they are. It is easy to feel pressured into being what society wants you to be. So we need to change the normalities we have for our society to include all people. Secondly, because toxic masculinity typically aligns with familial issues starting at a young age, it is helpful to have a supportive and functional household environment. Teaching kids from a young age how to handle emotions and having a firm but understanding type of parenting style is beneficial for young kids. The Catholic Church has several teachings, but the one that relates to toxic masculinity is the teaching of community and common good. The church says how we organize our society and economics and politics, law and policy directly affects human dignity and the capacity of individuals to grow in community. Because toxic masculinity is a societal error on our part, we need to be kind and accepting of all people to help build a better and stronger community. Toxic masculinity is a societal problem. Men develop a toxic and harmful way of thinking, starting at a young age, with huge negative impacts and consequences on society. These effects extend past men, affecting women, children, and the LGBTQIA plus community too. To prevent this from happening, we need to take care of it in children at a young age by providing a supportive environment. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kiara Foster, and today I will be talking to you about the hardships women face in the music industry. Just like our everyday lives, the music industry deals with female discrimination and criticism. On today's playlist, you will be listening to female artists' 5 main struggles: pay, recognition, talent value, popular image, and racial discrimination. Before I begin discussing those topics, can anyone tell me what this number represents? Taylor? Not quite. Anaya? No. According to Billboard.com, this number represents the percentage of women who currently work in the music industry, meaning throughout the whole world, not even half of the artists are women. Women in the music industry face many problems stemming from sexism and misogyny. According to TuneCore, 3 in 5 women experience sexual harassment, while 1 in 5 experience sexual assault. Most did not report due to fear of intense backlash or loss of career standing. In this industry, women typically go unseen. They are often seen as less than and unfit for their jobs. They are told to be sexy and to talk less, as they don't have talent like men do. This treatment is unfair, and women are constantly being underestimated and considered unworthy. Artist Billie Eilish stated, "If I were a guy and not wearing these baggy clothes, no one would bat an eye." There are people out there saying, "Dress like a girl for once. Wear tight clothes. You'd be much prettier and your career would be so much better." The music industry is full of different kinds of genres and styles of art. Many artists compete against each other through song. When defining what women in the music industry is, it comes to one thing. They are women who struggle to compete against men, not only in their category, but globally. Only 32% of women are in the pop genre, 28% in rap and hip hop, 16% in country, and 2% in rock. Throughout the previous years and now, men have constantly knocked out women in all categories. This is the Catholic social teaching, dignity of work and rights of workers. This teaching states that the dignity of all workers must be respected and those basic rights of workers must be respected. My topic corresponds with this teaching due to the rights of female artists being disrespected in the music industry. They do not get fair wages when it comes to pay and are set aside on different standards. We see this in the amount of Grammys they win, opportunities they are given, and more. When it comes to dealing with pay in the music industry, women typically are paid less, leaving a huge gap. Lots of this comes from gender stereotypes and objectification. Despite this being seen as struggles for only female artists, producers and songwriters go through it as well. They do not pay women for their music, they pay women for what they look like they are worth and what they think they are worth. To be shown recognition is one of the hardest things these women have to deal with. Most of the time, their creations get stolen by men, which not only makes it harder for a woman to grow in this industry, but gives a man a competing advantage. It is important for us to learn who they are, what they stand for, and how to pronounce their names. According to RouteNote.com, half of the top 10 artists in 2025 are women, those being Billie Eilish, Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, and Rihanna. Though it might seem like a minor thing, it is a huge impact from the previous years. Having even one woman be named top 10 has a huge impact on other female artists. Now we have 5. Raise your hand if you know who these 2 women are. Raise your hand if you think Beyonce gets paid more. No, raise your hand if you think Taylor Swift gets paid more. Well, did you know that Beyonce's net worth is $706 million and Taylor Swift's net worth is $1.6 billion? Weird, right? The average person would think Beyonce's net worth is more due to her intense popularity in music. Beyonce has a larger following and presence online. Beyonce has sold tons more records than Taylor Swift ever has. Would this be identified as racial discrimination? It's already hard being discriminated against for being a woman, but there are women out there who are discriminated against based on race, ethnicity, culture, and more. Though this particular comparison may not be the case, women of color do face this issue. Sounds wrong since people of color generally found in music for what it is, but it's true. People see them as unfit and undeserving of their art. This causes them to receive little to no recognition, unlike their white female and male counterparts. When it comes to being a female artist, keeping a popular image is key. Most women do this by sexualizing themselves, while others are shaped by the public. We see this in song lyrics, titles, and music videos. They are made to be seen as sex mascots, only recognized by what they wear or how they appear. To many, there are plenty of ways to stay popular, but for women, their options are very few. Throughout history, music artists have been mistreated by their label companies. This is artist Chapel Roan speaking up on how label companies set them aside and provide no care.
Because I got signed so young, I got signed as a minor, and when I got dropped, I had 0 job experience under my belt, and like most people, I had a difficult time finding a job in the pandemic and could not afford health insurance. It was so devastating to feel so committed to my art and feel so betrayed by the system and so dehumanized to not have help. And if my label would have prioritized artist health, I could have been provided care by a company I was giving everything to.
The rap genre most of us listen to. Did you know there has only been 3 women in rap to ever win a Grammy? This is artist Doechie's speech at the 2025 Grammys acknowledging that.
This category was introduced in 1989, and 2 women have won. Lauryn Hill, 3 women have won.
Lauren Hill, Cardi B, and Doechii.
Rock has been one of the genres that people think of as predominantly male without even trying to learn about or recognize the women in the category. So many women like Tina Turner, Stevie Nicks, and Joan Jett set the stage for female artists to do what they do. The genre itself should be more acknowledged and given recognition, along with alternative rock, heavy metal, and indie. The country genre is one that is overlooked as a whole. Many do not care to explore, but if they did, they would know how much women have shaped it into what it is today. Dolly Parton is an idol to the country category, along with Loretta Lynn and Carrie Underwood, their music influencing many of the young and upcoming artists. In conclusion, there are many ways women get neglected in the music industry. Though they are talented in many ways, they are still looked down upon. We should stop downgrading them and judging them, but instead educate ourselves on their struggles and their impact. They need to they need more support when it comes to public services and services behind the scenes. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my speech. Hopefully this changes your opinion the next time you listen to my speech.
Could you guys give a round of applause to everyone that went before me? Good afternoon. My name is Makai Jones, and today I'll be concluding the class of 2025 speech presentation talking about inequality in education. There are many reasons why education isn't equitable in America. The four main topics I'll be covering today are racial inequalities, income disparities, gender differences, and the federal government and its impact on education. Racial inequalities are seen in all kinds of work industries, but are reflected the most in education. In education specifically, racial inequality leaves students of color at a disadvantage compared to their peers. Black students and students of color don't have equal opportunities because of their race. They don't get shown the same positive attention in the classroom and don't receive the same treatment as their white peers, which often cause students of color to fall great levels behind, creating large educational gaps between students of colors and whites. Here are some graphs from the New York Times showing parent socioeconomic status impact on student achievement. The large light purple bubbles represents all school districts in America. The x-axis in red represents parent socioeconomic status from poorest on the left to richest on the right. The y-axis represents grade levels ahead or above in testing. Baltimore City students average negative 1.5 grade levels behind in testing, while Baltimore County, Harford County, Howard County, and Anne Arundel County all operate grade levels above. This is a graph from the National Assessment of Educational Progress that compares the test scores of white students and black students. This graph shows that white students' test scores are better than black students' test scores in both reading and math in grades 4th, 8th, and 12th. Due to racial inequalities, black students fall grade levels behind of their white peers because of the lack of opportunities given to them out in the classroom and resources given to them. According to the E. Casey Foundation, 84% of black students tested below 4th grade proficiency in reading, and 91% of black students tested below proficient in 8th grade math. 82% of Native American students tested below 4th grade proficiency in reading, and 89% of Native American students tested below proficient in the 8th grade math. 80% of Hispanic students tested below 4th grade proficiency in reading, and 86% of Hispanic students tested below proficient in 8th grade math, compared to Hispanic students who only had 59% of 4th grade students that tested below proficiency and 63% of students that tested below proficiency. According to the E. Casey Foundation, black students face more consequences more frequently than any other race in the school, which results in an increase in black students' involvement with the criminal justice system, and decrease in test scores, which aren't really good to begin with, an increase in the educational gaps between races, and a decrease in high school and graduation rates in the black community. This is a graph from Brawler briefly and clearly shows that white students do more questionable behaviors than black students, but black students still face more consequences than white students. This graph shows that over time there was a decrease in the suspicion rates of white students, but an increase in the suspicion rates of black students. In education specifically, income disparities refers to the unequal distribution of educational resources, leading to differences to access to quality education, school funding, and ultimately educational outcomes and life chances. Income disparities often leave students of color at a disadvantage because they go to poor schools, are funded less, and aren't given the same opportunity as their peers. Income inequality and inequality in education often go hand in hand. Students who live in lower income areas may have limited access to quality education. Statistically, those from lower income areas are less likely to pursue higher education. In fact, only about 59% of lower income students enroll in college compared to 59% from well-off families. 89% from well-off families. The higher the income of the parent, the more likely a student is to see admission. Students and parents from wealthier families are constantly competing for ever more academic success. As parents hire tutors, enroll their children into robotics classes, and push them to solve obscure math problems, those children keep pulling away from those who can't afford their enrichment. Basically, parents with means can afford to enrich their child's education, while students in underfunded schools do not have the luxury. You're looking at stats and images of the Butler School, a private co-ed school in Potomac, Maryland, with a $60,000 tuition for the upperclassmen. Parents who can afford to send their children to the Butler School will receive education on a 102-acre campus that boasts stats of the art building, an aquatics and fitness center, a dedicated visual and performing arts building, and a dedicated staff of advanced professionals. These students receive the best of the best education because of the financial picture this school has. Compare that to the Stadium School, a school in Baltimore City that routinely ranks low on report card evaluation lists. Why are students at Butler so successful, but students at the Stadium School struggle to reach basic benchmarks? The answer is greatly impacted by income disparities. How is gender impacting education? In education, girls outperforming boys is a big problem and is seen very commonly in modern school systems. When girls outperform boys as a group, it signifies a gender achievement where girls graduate at higher rates, have higher grades, and participate more in higher education. But why do girls outperform boys? The reasons on the screen are the most common reasons why girls outperform boys. But while doing research, I came across different reasons that people may not know contribute to girl success, such as gender of teacher, gender stereotypes that impact in the classroom, and behavior problems. This is a graph from the International English Language Testing System that shows the percentage of male and female teachers all throughout university. This graph shows that up to college, there are more female teachers than male teachers. According to the Stanford CEPA, several studies have found that the assessment to a teacher of the opposite sex may negatively impact a child's academic experience. On average, teachers are more likely to have a negative perceptions of a child's performance if the child is of the opposite sex. Children are also likely to perform worse when assigned to the teacher of the opposite sex. And because there are more female teachers than male teachers, students are often taught by female teachers with either affects them positively or negatively. It typically affects girls positively and boys negatively, which cause boys to fall grade levels behind. Gender stereotypes can negatively impact students by influencing their academic performance, their mental health, and self-esteem. According to the Institute of Physics, gender stereotypes shape self-perceptions, attitudes to relationships, and influence participation in the world of work. In a school environment, they can affect a young person's classroom experience, academic performance, subject choice, and well-being. The assumptions we make about boys or girls may be conscious or unconscious, but can affect the opportunities given to a student based on gender. According to the American Psychological Association, research shows that boys tend to receive more severe punishment than girls for the same behaviors, especially if they are black or have a bigger body type, pointing to bias in the application of school policies. This quote shows that boys are often harsher disciplined than girls, even if they commit the same actions, which play a role in why girls outperform boys in school. Because all these problems exist, educational gaps between male and female exist. This graph shows that for the past 40 years, women have earned the majority of bachelor's degree. For the past 35 years, women have earned the majority of master's degree, and for the past 15 years, women have earned the majority of doctorate degrees. However, women still hold far less professional positions than men, and the gender pay gap is wide and in favor of men. Girls are statistically more educated and yet less paid than men, and are represented less in the workforce. Has anyone seen education in the news recently? The Trump administration has signed executive orders that would dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, defunding many of its programs and shifting functions to other agencies. This would affect the millions of students who rely on the Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education, also known as DOE, is responsible for developing and implementing educational policies, distributing federal funding to schools and higher education institutions, and ensuring compliance with civil rights laws and educational settings. The U.S. Department of Education is responsible for administrating and funding a wide range of educational programs such as the ones on the slide. Pell Grant provides financial aid for low-income students pursuing higher education. Title I provides funding for schools with a high percentage of low-income students. Student loans subsidize student loans to help students finance their education. IDA provides funding for special education programs with students with disabilities. The Elementary School and Secondary Act is a federal law designed to provide funding and support for low-income and minority students, as well as improve the overall quality of elementary school and secondary school education. Dismantling the U.S. Department of Education would be catastrophic for the million of students who rely on the Department of Education. Civil rights protection against discrimination based on race, gender, and disability will also be gutted. The Catholic Church has several different teachings. While doing research, I found that the community and the common good connects with my slide. It teaches us that education is the root of economics and politics and a way for individuals to grow in the community. And to ensure that society succeeds, we as a society need to make sure education is important and something that is equitable. If everyone has a fair chance to receive a good education, the world will be a better place and socially and economically. As a black student coming from a public elementary school, my family found it necessary for me to go to a private middle school. They told me that it would give me opportunities that public school couldn't. That middle school so happened to be Madisyn Academy. MSA has helped me grow into the young man that I am today. In the sixth grade, I got in some sort of trouble every week, and my grades and academic performance is nowhere close to what it was in the eighth grade. Private school education allowed me to expand my knowledge and overcome barriers like limited access to resources and support. I was given access to unique resources that helped me grow. But why shouldn't all students of color have the chance to experience education that helps them? Shouldn't education be equitable and easy to access for all students? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your attendance today at the final day of speeches. Can we have a round of applause again for all our educators? I am exceptionally proud of every single one of you. If I say more words than that, you will have to wipe me up off the floor because I will be crying. I'm going to call Dr. Sucre up to give our final addresses, and then Mr. Andrews.